We're back.
That was a long drive.
Yeah, it was only 1,000 kilometres or so. But we are back to work on the other Subaru wagon, the Levorg.
Cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be mad.
You reckon you probably should move it because I've got to do grinding and welding and whatnot.
Yeah, you wrecked my Juco. I might put this out of harm's way. Let's do it. Welcome to another special episode of Mighty Car Mods. We are continuing work on the Subaru Levorg. Al is here, but he's not the only special guest. We've got lots of special guests. The team is back together, people. We've got Benny, the mechanical stick, we got Al, and we got Davo.
In the not too distant past, Al brought his creative fabrication skills and purge welding gear to Super Garage and whipped up a magnificent set of custom headers to get exhaust from the built flat 6 EZ30 into the significantly large size turbocharger we've chosen for this build. Over a few days of work, we managed to get it all fabricated but ran out of time to finish it properly, which is exactly what we hope to do today.
You lot may have noticed that the pace is starting to pick up. That's because we're kind of at the last 10% of things right now. I'm going to say 20 or 10% because of my fingers are crossed. But a lot of stuff is in place. It looks like there's manifolds, it looks like there's plumbing, but there's little stuff like routing coolant correctly and our oil cooler, which we have to run because there's no room for oil filters here and because we're going to need an oil cooler anyway. Learned that lesson with Supergramps. What else are you seeing under here, Al?
I'm seeing stuff that we've forgotten about because it's been a little while, but we probably have to do everything up because she's all just finger tightened, but I know that exhaust looks all right if I say so myself.
The exhaust looks fantastic. The turbo's not on currently either. So that's...
Why did we take that off?
I think because the power steering lines don't work and the power steering pump doesn't work and we don't have the right fitting for the power steering pump. So we've got a couple of power steering lines and aircon lines on their way now, which hopefully will work. But we didn't have a complete EZ30 driveline. We just had the actual motor and a few bits and pieces. So this is where we're now scratching our heads and going, what else do we need?
Since we last worked on the car, a bunch of parts have arrived and are ready to be installed. I've decided to spend up in both time and money on some areas that should help this engine survive. We pushed the limit of what a stock EZ36 could do in Supergramps, and we're taking those lessons on board as we'll be asking a lot more of this particular setup. While this is a 6-cylinder engine, due both to the limitations and unique qualities of a boxer engine, it doesn't have the bulk of a 2JZ or a Barra to support 4-figure power outputs. It also doesn't have the big weight or packaging requirements, which is why it will work so well in the Levorg. And the power to weight advantage of a light engine, along with grip and traction, can make a huge difference. So first up, injectors. With a maximum power goal in mind, you can work backwards to spec out what parts you might need to support it. This is especially true with the fuel system. The theoretical maximum is about half a megawatt, and realistically in a street tune, 10 to 15% less than that. We've chosen 1650 injectors, which should support that goal with the help of 2 decent fuel pumps in the tank and a larger supply line. We've now got to finalise some of the cooling system lines. We've deleted the factory oil cooler so the water line for that can be blocked off by tapping a thread and installing a brass plug. We're going to use a spare port on the top of the head for a combined coolant temp and pressure sensor. Next, an oil cooler. Nearly all Subarus come with an oil cooler that routes engine coolant through it. We've taken this away and instead have opted for one that will sit above the intercooler right behind the grille. In line, we'll be installing a thermostat so it only opens and uses the cooler when the oil temp reaches a certain level, preventing the oil from being too cold and therefore not correctly lubricating the engine in cold temperatures. While I make some brackets to mount the cooler on the bumper support panel, Al and Benny are making up custom -10 oil lines to connect the system together. We're also venting a catch can in the lower bumper area for whatever doesn't go back to the intake. These engines are known to breathe, so this is fairly important. Meanwhile, Dave is slowly picking away at the wiring, and while it's pretty fiddly stuff, we are actually making a heap of progress.
So I've decided to put an oil cooler on the Levorg, partly because I did have issues with Supergramps with just all the temperatures coming up, oil temp coming up too high and coolant temp coming up too high. So this time I've also got a bigger radiator, a Phoenix radiator, and also I've decided to put an oil cooler, which happens to fit quite neatly up under there. So in terms of plumbing this, Al, what's going on with all of this stuff?
So we've got a a thermostat here, and that's climate specific, I suppose, whether you'd need that or not. It does get pretty cold here, so it is a good idea to have one if you're in, I don't know, Sydney South. Probably wouldn't need one where I live because it never gets cold, but so that's going to take care of whether the oil cooler is used when the engine is cold, so it's going to bring your oil up to temperature
So it just
faster.
bypasses back that way when it's not hot enough, right?
It goes through, that way, through into the oil filter and then back to the engine, and then opens up once the oil gets hot.
When there's enough heat on this side, it goes right. You can go through and goes whoop into the cooler and back again. Cool. And so that system is now pretty much done. What's going on here as well?
That is our pressure and temperature sensor that goes to the Nexus R3. Mm-hmm. So Davo's been hard at work wiring all those gadgets up, and I think we got a bit done.
Yeah, we are close though, aren't we? Because with fuel in it and our wiring underway, bolt the turbo back on.
Check everything is done
Yeah.
up. I think that's where we're at.
Check everything's done, and we'll also blow out our intercooler pipe. So anyway, it's literally the last couple of percent now just to make it work. So we will be cranking it. This episode we'll be cranking it. Hopefully it starts. We don't know if it's going to start, but we will be cranking it over, turning it over, making sure everything's good, and then we will hear the sound of this sweet flat 6 in the Levorg.
Our aim today, before Al had to head back home, is to crank the engine, check for leaks, and help Dave finish up any wiring. We're not quite ready to run it yet, as there's still some unfinished systems, but we are getting close. We can add fluids like power steering and engine oil. For the initial crank, we're going to use water to cool it and replace it with coolant later on. We've only identified one leak, and it's coming from our sandwich plate adapter, which is in need of a new O-ring. With it replaced, we can try and crank the engine to see if we can build some oil pressure.
Buttoning on. There it goes. That's a good sign. Fuel pump's priming.
It is?
Quite a long prime, hey? We can set that
Oh,
though,
yeah,
can't we?
I can shorten that. Yeah, that's not a problem. Yeah. Maybe? I don't know.
Well, that's cool. You made it crank.
That is something. Yeah.
The engine's turning over.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the CAN keypad.
Oh, so you've bypassed...
I've bypassed
You've
it,
bypassed my start button for now just to manually, well, not manually, but just to actually activate the starter. Yeah, look at it go. That means our oil cooler and everything's working. Oh, that's so good.
That'll work. So that's
Davo.
good. All right, Mad. Just got a couple more things to check.
A couple. You got hundreds of things to check.
That's all right. That's fine.
Woo. So, next time we see you, this will hopefully already be dynoed and working, but I will keep you updated. Thanks again, Al, Skid Factory, check it out. Have a safe flight, my friend.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for your help. It is the next day, people. Dave is here again. He's tidied up his wiring and is very happy with how it is looking. He had a big sleep, thought about it, dreamt about it, had weird Subaru fever dreams, and now he's pretty much got it sorted, which is really cool. So now we're at the point where we are going to be calibrating the throttle. We are going to be able to set our base fuel pressure and then crank it, make sure it's actually got oil pressure and everything's happy. Then we can add fuel into the mix and see if it will fire.
We're taking the time to check off each supporting system one by one, in the hope that we can successfully drive the car to the dyno. Troubleshooting when it's strapped on the rollers is expensive, and we're not as well equipped to fix anything there that goes wrong.
Now the Nexus is able to power both pumps separately, and so the idea is you would use one and then bring the other one on. Using both at the same time is just too tricky. So as we were priming it, it was making weird noises, and we're scratching our head and then realising that those two pumps, as they're priming, are just overpowering the return line, because we're using the original feed line as a return line. The feed line's massive, -8, the return one is like 5/16, I think it's like -5. So what does that mean? It means now I'm going to set a fuel pressure regulator on one pump. Dave's going to disable the second one, and only once we're on the dyno with tuning fork, with Scotty, we will start to think about introducing that second pump where required. So to drive around most of the time won't be needed. When you really hit it full boost, high revs, bang, the second pump will be introduced. So that's what we're going to do. Woo, here we go.
Sounds positive, doesn't it?
Promising. Here we go. So much going on in there.
Yeah, there is. I didn't really see why it even stalled. I was looking at so many different things, but yep, we'll try it again, man.
All right, here we go. It's alive. I can't believe it. Dude, it's alive.
Wow.
How do I turn it off? I can't.
Let's turn the cam.
I don't have a key.
Oh, push the button, sorry.
This one?
No, that button.
Sounds pretty good.
Oh, I'm going to have a good sleep tonight.
It sounds pretty
so
good.
That's good.
The power steering pump sounds sad.
It does,
So
but
that's-
it's probably got there's so much air in it.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a bit of back to forward with
Yeah,
that.
whatever.
But
That's not a big deal.
It has been a long time coming, but the EZ30 is now finally alive. There's plenty of stuff burning off, but it is running.
It starts and it runs. It's not finished yet though, because we've got no cam control. Don't even have an intercooler pipe there. But now Dave has confirmed that it works, and he knows he's not wasting his time with wiring, so he can pull it all off again and like rewrap it, check everything, put it back together. When we put the wiring back on, then we drive it out, and then we go to the dyno. It is time, people. Keen-eyed viewers will notice that, yes, the Levorg now has the plates that have been on Supergramps for over 8 years, which means it's official, people. This is my 6-cylinder turbocharged Subaru wagon, the spiritual successor of Supergramps. I'm very happy that Supergramps is now living on, actually, which is really, really cool. So, what's happening today? Wiring is about 85–90% done. I do need to go and see Dave one more time, but rather than Dave coming here, I'm going to take the car to Haltech because the very next step after the wiring is completed is to dyno it. Now, I'm nervous about it. I don't actually think I've had a car with a properly built engine before, so we have way more possibility for making power, but we also just can't throw another wrecker motor in it if it blows up. It's a much bigger deal. So I know everyone will be feeling a little bit more nervous about it. I certainly am. But I'm also confident. I'm really happy with all the work that's done. All my mates that helped out are absolute legends. Benny, Alan, Dave, Scott, just everyone. I'm really feeling very excited about this, is the truth, and nervous. So, the lithium battery is on charge. I am going to drive it there because you can, because it's set up for that, which is really cool. And the wiring is not in any sort of harm's way. It just needs to be like finally pieced together. Step 1. Let's do this. Made it to Haltech. The car behaved perfectly. Didn't get hot, didn't get cranky, added some ethanol. Now we continue the work.
We've decided to leave wrapping the wiring loom until last, so that troubleshooting is that little bit easier. Everything appears to be working as it should, so now I can pull off the intercooler pipes, the intake and some other bits and pieces to extract the wiring loom. Once it's out, Dave and I can set up on a table and lock in where all the plugs of the harness need to end up, wrapping it in loom tube and oil and heat resistant engine bay friendly tape. With our awesome OEM looking loom all done, we can fire up the car and check that everything still works. I headed home confident in the fact that we'd be on the dyno the very next day to tune this car. But then I got a message that no one likes, which is there's a puddle of something under your car and it's not working.